The stars looked different in the Kepler expanse. Captain Maria Chen stood on the bridge of the Endeavour, watching the view screen with careful eyes. Her crew had been exploring this region for 3 weeks, and everything about it felt wrong. The other species in the galaxy called this place cursed. They told stories about ships that entered and never returned. Most vessels avoided the expanse entirely, but Maria Chen was not like most captains. She had spent 20 years exploring space, and she knew the difference between superstition and real danger. When her sensors picked up unusual readings from a nearby star system, she made a choice that would change everything. "Take us in," she ordered. Her second officer, Lieutenant Park, looked worried but nodded. The Endeavour moved forward, its engines humming quietly in the darkness of space. 3 days later, they found something impossible. A planet appeared on their screens, covered in cities that glowed faintly in the night. But the cities looked old and broken. Some buildings stood tall and proud, while others had collapsed into ruins. It was like looking at a civilization that had once been great, but was now dying slowly. "Captain, I'm detecting life signs," Park said, his voice filled with surprise. "Millions of them. But there's no record of any inhabited worlds in this sector. The Galactic Consortium maps show this entire region as empty." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. The Galactic Consortium was the alliance of alien species that ruled most of the known galaxy. Humanity had joined just 15 years ago in 2232. The Consortium's maps were supposed to be complete and accurate. If they said a region was empty, everyone believed them. "Send a greeting message," Maria said. "Let's see who lives down there." The response came quickly. A face appeared on the screen, and the entire bridge crew gasped. The being before them had skin that looked like crystal, reflecting light in beautiful patterns. Their eyes were large and kind, colored like deep purple gems. When they spoke, a translator converted their words into English. "Human vessel, you should not be here," the being said. Their voice sounded sad and tired. "This system is under quarantine. If the Consortium detects you, they will destroy your ship. Please leave while you still can. We do not want your deaths on our conscience." Maria leaned forward in her chair. "I'm Captain Maria Chen of Earth. We mean no harm. Can you tell me what's happening here? Why would the Consortium destroy us for finding you?" The being was quiet for a long moment. Then they said, "My name is Keeper Tessera. I am one of the leaders of the Valdrani people. If you truly wish to know our story, then come to the surface. But know that by doing so, you risk everything." Maria looked at her crew. Every face showed the same mixture of curiosity and fear. They all knew the Consortium's rules. Breaking quarantine was one of the most serious crimes in galactic law. But something about Tessera's voice, about the sadness in those purple eyes, made Maria's decision easy. "Prepare a shuttle," she said. "I'm going down." The city where Tessera lived was called Sanctuary, and it broke Maria's heart to see it. Beautiful towers reached toward the sky, covered in intricate carvings and designs that must have taken centuries to create. But many of the towers were crumbling. Gardens that had once been carefully tended now grew wild and chaotic. The streets were clean but empty, with far too few people for a city so large. Tessera met Maria in a building that looked like a combination of a library and a temple. Thousands of books and data crystals lined the walls, preserving knowledge from a civilization that seemed to be fading away. "Thank you for coming," Tessera said, offering Maria a seat. "It has been 300 years since anyone from outside visited us." We had begun to think the galaxy had forgotten we existed. 300 years? Maria could barely process the number. "What happened?" Tessera's crystalline skin seemed to dim as they told their story. 3 centuries ago, the Valdrani had been a thriving civilization with 18 colony worlds spread across multiple star systems. They were scientists, artists, and philosophers who valued freedom and independence above all else. When the Galactic Consortium approached them with an offer to join, the Valdrani had refused. The Consortium had a rule called the Collective Defense Initiative. Every member species had to contribute ships and soldiers to a unified military force controlled by the Consortium's leaders, the Hierarchs. The Valdrani didn't believe in maintaining large military forces. They thought such power concentrated in the hands of a few was dangerous. So they said no. The Consortium did not accept rejection well. They declared us a threat to galactic stability, Tessera explained, their voice heavy with old pain. Then they invented a lie. They told the galaxy that the Valdrani carried a dimensional plague, a disease that could spread between star systems and kill billions. They said we had to be quarantined for everyone's safety. Maria felt anger building in her chest. But there is no plague, is there? No, Tessera said simply. Our scientists proved it many times. We sent the data to the consortium, begging them to test it. They ignored every message. Instead, they did something far worse. Tessera pulled up a holographic display. Maria watched in horror as 17 worlds appeared on the screen, each marked with a red symbol. One by one, Tessera explained what had happened to each Valdrani colony. Orbital bombardment, forced evacuations where ships were destroyed before they could escape, biological weapons, entire populations of millions wiped out in what the consortium called containment measures. Sanctuary is all that remains, Tessera said. We are the last million Valdrani in the entire universe. Our population shrinks every year. Without access to medical technology, trade, or contact with other worlds, we are dying. In another century, perhaps less, the Valdrani will be extinct. Maria stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see Valdrani children playing in a park. They looked happy despite everything, their crystalline skin catching the sunlight and creating small rainbows. They had no idea their entire species was doomed. Why doesn't anyone question this? Maria asked. Surely some species in the consortium must know the truth. Many probably suspect, Tessera replied. But the consortium has existed for over 1,000 years. The hierarchs who lead it are ancient and powerful. Most species are afraid to challenge them, and after 3 centuries I think many have simply forgotten about us. We are a cautionary tale now, a warning of what happens when you refuse to obey. Maria turned back to face Tessera. I won't let this stand. I'm going to take your evidence to the Galactic Council. I'm going to tell them what really happened here. For the first time, something like hope flickered in Tessera's eyes, but it was mixed with fear. Captain Chen, if you do this, the consortium will turn on humanity. Your species is still new to galactic politics. You have no real power or influence. The hierarchs could do to Earth what they did to us. Maybe, Maria admitted, but I didn't join the consortium to watch innocent people die while I do nothing. What's the point of being part of a galactic civilization if we just accept injustice and murder? Tessera reached out and gently touched Maria's hand. The Valdrani's crystalline fingers were cool and smooth. 300 years we have waited in this prison. 300 years. And you are the first person who has looked at us and seen people worth saving. Whatever happens next, Captain Chen, know that you have given us something precious. You have reminded us that goodness still exists in the universe. Maria squeezed Tessera's hand gently. I'm going to do more than remind you. I'm going to get you out of here. As the Endeavor left Sanctuary's orbit, Maria looked at the planet growing smaller behind them. She had promised Keeper Tessera that she would fight for the Valdrani. She had no idea if humanity had the strength to stand against 1,000-year-old galactic power. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was going to try. The journey back to human space took 2 weeks. During that time, Maria and her crew compiled every piece of evidence they had collected. Genetic scans proving the Valdrani had no plague, historical records showing their peaceful history, footage of their dying cities and dwindling population, testimony from Tessera about the 17 destroyed colonies. When they arrived at Earth, Maria sent an emergency request to address the United Earth Government and the Galactic Council. Her report spread quickly through human space. People read about the Valdrani and their 300-year imprisonment. They saw the images of Sanctuary, beautiful and broken, and humanity began to ask a question that would echo across the stars. What are we willing to sacrifice to do what's right? The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime was designed to intimidate. It was a massive dome that seemed to float in space itself, surrounded by stars on all sides. Representatives from 200 species sat in circular rows, each on platforms that rose or lowered based on their status in the consortium. At the very top sat the hierarchs, the insectoid beings who had founded the consortium over 1,000 years ago. They looked like massive mantises made of metal and shadows, their compound eyes reflecting no warmth or mercy. Captain Maria Chen stood alone in the center of the chamber, feeling very small. The other human representatives sat in the lower rows, marking humanity's junior status. They had been members for only 15 years, barely a moment in galactic time. Maria knew that many species still saw humans as children playing at civilization. But she stood straight and spoke clearly. Honored Council, I come before you to present evidence of a terrible injustice. 300 years ago, the Valdrani people were falsely accused of carrying a plague and placed under total quarantine. Since then, 17 of their 18 worlds have been destroyed. Only 1 million Valdrani remain, trapped on a dying world with no hope of survival. I have brought proof that the plague never existed. The Valdrani were punished, not for being dangerous, but for refusing to surrender their independence. Maria activated her holographic display. The evidence appeared for all to see. Genetic scans, historical documents, footage of the ruined cities of Sanctuary. She showed everything, holding nothing back. Around the chamber, representatives watched in silence. Some looked shocked, others looked uncomfortable, but most looked carefully neutral, their faces revealing nothing. When Maria finished, the chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then one of the hierarchs spoke, their voice like grinding metal. Captain Chen of Earth, you have broken consortium law by entering a quarantined system. You have endangered your crew and potentially the entire galaxy. And now you stand before us and question decisions made long before your species discovered fire. I question murder, Maria said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. I question the destruction of 17 worlds and billions of innocent lives. The evidence is clear. The Valdrani carried no plague. They were killed because they said no to you. Another hierarch leaned forward, their metal body creaking. This one's voice was colder than the first. The Valdrani made themselves enemies of order. In a galaxy of thousands of species, there must be law. There must be unity. Those who refuse to join the collective endanger everyone. The quarantine was necessary for galactic stability. Stability? Maria couldn't keep the anger from her voice now. You call genocide stability? You call the extinction of an entire species necessary? What kind of galactic civilization allows this? A different representative spoke now. This one belonged to the Kelthari, a species known for their diplomatic skills. They looked like tall, elegant birds with feathers that changed color with their emotions. Captain Chen, please understand. The decision regarding the Valdrani was made 300 years ago by leaders we never knew. Many of us were not even born when these events occurred. We cannot undo the past. But you can change the future, Maria argued. Right now, 1 million Valdrani are dying slowly on Sanctuary. We can save them. We can admit the truth and end this cruel punishment. Isn't that what a civilized society does? The first hierarch's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Earth is a probationary member of this consortium. You have been part of our civilization for barely a moment. You do not understand the complexities of maintaining order across thousands of worlds. You do not have the right to question policies that have kept the galaxy stable for centuries. Ambassador Crixith, another hierarch, spoke with icy finality. The matter of the Valdrani is closed. It was decided long ago and will not be reopened. Captain Chen, you are ordered to forget what you saw and never return to the quarantine zone. If you do, your ship will be destroyed. This council is dismissed. Maria stood in the center of the chamber as the representatives filed out. Some looked at her with sympathy, others avoided her eyes. But none of them spoke in support of the Valdrani. They were all too afraid or too invested in the system to challenge it. As Maria walked out of the chamber, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Ambassador Sarah Kim, Earth's primary representative to the council. Sarah's face was tight with worry. Maria, what you did in there was brave but dangerous. The hierarchs don't forget challenges to their authority. This could have serious consequences for Earth. I know, Maria said quietly. But I couldn't stay silent. Sarah, they murdered billions of people and lied about it. If we accept that, if we just look the other way, what does that make us? Sarah sighed. I agree with you, but agreeing and acting are different things. Come on, we need to talk to Earth's government before the hierarchs make their next move. The emergency session of the United Earth government lasted for 3 days. Maria presented her evidence again, this time to humanity's leaders. The debate that followed was intense and painful. The chamber was divided between those who wanted to help the Valdrani and those who thought the risk was too great. Director James Okafor of Earth Defense stood and spoke passionately. He was an older man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. I understand the fear in this room. The consortium has thousands of ships. They could destroy Earth if they wanted to. But I ask you all to consider something. We joined the consortium because we wanted to be part of something greater. We wanted to believe that intelligence and civilization meant something beyond just power and conquest. If we stay silent while innocent people are murdered, if we accept that might makes right, then what is the point? We become accomplices to genocide. We lose the very thing that makes us human. A younger representative stood up, her voice shaking with emotion. But Director Okafor, we're talking about putting all of humanity at risk. 8 billion lives on Earth, millions more in our colonies. Can we really gamble everything for a species we just discovered? Maria stood then, her voice carrying across the chamber. I've been thinking about that question since I met Keeper Tessera on Sanctuary, and I realized something. The Valdrani asked themselves the same question 300 years ago. They could have surrendered their independence to stay safe. They could have joined the consortium and avoided all of this. But they chose to say no because they believed some things were more important than safety. They died for that belief. Every single one of their 17 colonies was destroyed because they refused to compromise their principles. Maybe they were fools. Or maybe they were the bravest people in the galaxy. Another representative, a woman from the Asian Alliance, spoke up. But we have families, children. We have a responsibility to protect them. Yes, Maria agreed. And what kind of universe are we protecting them for? One where the strong can murder the weak whenever they want? Where telling the truth gets you labeled an enemy? Where a million people can die slowly over centuries and everyone just looks away? Is that really the future we want to give our children? The debate went on for hours. Arguments flew back and forth, passionate and desperate. Finally, it came to a vote. The chamber fell silent as the results appeared on the screen. 67% in favor. Humanity had made its choice. Director Okafor stood to address the government and the billions watching around the world. Today, we have decided that Earth will not abandon the Valdrani. We will break the consortium's quarantine. We will send food, medicine, and technology to Sanctuary. We do this knowing the cost may be high. We do this knowing the hierarchs will be angry. But we do this because it is right, and because some things are worth standing for. The announcement went out across the galaxy within hours. The consortium's response came just as quickly. A message from the hierarchs appeared on every screen in human space. Their metallic voices spoke in unison, cold and absolute. The human species has violated consortium law and defied the direct orders of this council. You have 72 hours to cease all contact with the quarantine zone. You will issue a formal apology and submit to penalties for your actions. If you do not comply, Earth's membership in the Galactic Consortium will be revoked. Economic sanctions will be imposed. And if you continue to break the quarantine, military force will be authorized. You have been warned. Maria watched the message from her quarters on Earth. Through her window, she could see the lights of the city below. Millions of people going about their lives unaware that everything might be about to change. She thought about Tessera and the children playing in Sanctuary's parks. She thought about the 17 destroyed worlds and the billions who had died alone and forgotten. Her communication device buzzed. It was a message from Admiral Takeshi Yamamoto, commander of Earth's primary defense fleet. Captain Chen, the first supply convoy is ready. We launch in 12 hours. I hope you know what you've started. Maria typed back a simple response. I know exactly what I've started, and I wouldn't change a thing. Across human space, ships were being loaded with supplies. Volunteers signed up faster than they could be processed. Everyone knew the risks, but people kept coming forward anyway. They wanted to be part of something that mattered. Admiral Takeshi Yamamoto had fought in 3 wars during his 30 years of military service, but he had never seen anything like this. His flagship, the Defiant, hung in space at the edge of Sanctuary's solar system. Around him floated 49 other human warships arranged in a defensive sphere around the supply convoy they were escorting. And facing them like a wall of metal and death was the Consortium Armada. 500 ships. Maybe more. They came from a dozen different species, each vessel designed according to their creator's unique understanding of warfare. There were massive hierarch dreadnoughts that looked like steel fortresses, swift Krentar hunters that darted through space like schools of predatory fish, Thulian carriers that launched swarms of smaller attack craft. The combined firepower facing humanity could have destroyed a planet. "Admiral, they're hailing us," his communications officer said, her voice steady despite the fear that everyone on the bridge must be feeling. "Put them through," Yamamoto ordered. A hierarch commander appeared on the screen, their insectoid face unreadable, but their voice heavy with authority. "Human vessels, you are in violation of consortium law. Turn back immediately or you will be fired upon. This is your only warning." Yamamoto stood and faced the screen. He was an older man with silver hair and a face marked by years of hard decisions. His voice was calm and clear. "Consortium forces, we are on a humanitarian mission to deliver food and medicine to a dying population. We have no hostile intent. We will not turn back. The quarantine exists for the safety of all species," the hierarch said. "Your refusal to comply is an act of war against the consortium itself." "No," Yamamoto replied. "An act of war is what was done to the Valdrani 300 years ago. We are simply refusing to be part of a genocide. You may fire on us if you wish, but we will not abandon innocent people to die." The hierarch's eyes seemed to glow with cold anger. "So be it. You have made your choice." The transmission ended. For several minutes, nothing happened. The two fleets hung in space, neither moving. Then slowly, the consortium ships began to spread out, forming a blockade around Sanctuary's system. They didn't attack, but the message was clear. Nothing would get through. "What do we do, Admiral?" his second officer asked. Yamamoto smiled grimly. "We wait, and we show them that humans are patient." He opened a channel to all ships in his fleet. All vessels maintain defensive positions. No one fires unless fired upon. We're going to sit here as long as it takes. And so began the strangest battle that the galaxy had ever seen. For 8 days, the two fleets faced each other in silence. Human ships held their position around Sanctuary, while consortium forces surrounded them. No shots were fired. No threats were made. It was a test of will, and everyone knew that whoever broke first would lose. But humanity had not come all this way to give up easily. Small supply shuttles began making runs down to Sanctuary's surface, slipping through gaps in the human defensive line. The consortium ships watched but did not interfere with these small craft. Perhaps they thought it didn't matter. Perhaps they were waiting for orders. Or perhaps some of them were starting to have doubts. On Sanctuary, the Valdrani watched the sky with wonder. For 3 centuries, they had been completely alone. Now human ships hung in orbit like bright stars holding back an entire armada. Supplies began arriving. Food that they hadn't tasted in generations. Medicine that could treat illnesses that had been killing them slowly. Technology that could help rebuild their crumbling cities. Keeper Tassara stood on a balcony in the capital, watching a human shuttle land in the central plaza. When the cargo doors opened, Valdrani workers rushed forward to help unload the supplies. But Tassara wasn't watching the supplies. She was watching the young human pilot who climbed out of the shuttle, stretching after the long flight down from orbit. The pilot looked up at the sky, saw the consortium blockade hanging there like a sword ready to fall, and waved anyway. Tassara felt something she hadn't felt in 300 years. She felt hope, and it terrified her because hope could be taken away, and the pain of that loss might be worse than the slow death they had been facing. As the standoff continued, something unexpected began to happen. Cracks started appearing in the consortium's unity. On their homeworld, the Kelthari held an emergency session of their High Council. The elegant bird-like beings debated for hours about what they were witnessing. Finally, their consul stood to address the assembly. "We have been members of the consortium for 800 years, the consul said, their feathers shifting through colors that showed deep thought. "In all that time, we have never questioned the hierarch's wisdom. But I must ask now, are we peacekeepers or are we tyrants? The humans are delivering food to the hungry and medicine to the sick. For this we threaten them with destruction. How is this justice? How is this civilization?" The debate spread to other consortium worlds. The Morthran, a species of warriors who valued honor above all else, began questioning their orders privately. Even some of the smaller species who had always been afraid to speak up started having quiet conversations about what was really happening in the Kepler expanse. But the hierarchs remained firm. They saw the situation clearly. If humanity succeeded in defying them, if this young species showed that the consortium's authority could be challenged, then everything would fall apart. Their 1,000-year dominion would end, so they made a decision that would change everything. On the 9th day of the standoff, without warning, a hierarch dreadnought fired on a human medical transport ship. The vessel was unarmed, clearly marked with medical symbols, and was making a supply run to Sanctuary. The attack came suddenly, a massive beam of energy that cut through the transport's hull like paper. The ship exploded, scattering debris across space. 147 people died in that instant. Doctors, nurses, supply technicians, and pilots. They never had a chance to defend themselves. They died doing nothing more threatening than carrying medicine to people who needed it. On the Defiance Bridge, alarms blared. Yamamoto watched the explosion on his view screen, his face frozen in shock and grief. His tactical officer shouted, "Admiral, all weapons are armed and ready." "Orders?" The bridge crew looked at Yamamoto, waiting. This was it. This was the moment that would decide everything. If he gave the order to fire, a full-scale war would begin. Humanity would be outnumbered 10-1. Earth itself might be destroyed. But if he didn't respond, if he let this attack go unanswered, then the hierarchs would know they could kill humans with impunity. Yamamoto closed his eyes for just a moment. He thought about the 147 people who had just died. He thought about the Valdrani on Sanctuary, watching the sky and waiting to see what humanity would do. He thought about his children back on Earth and all the children of all the species, and what kind of galaxy they would inherit. Then he opened his eyes and gave his orders. "Do not return fire. I repeat, do not return fire. Instead, I want every ship in this fleet to broadcast the following message on all frequencies." His communications officer looked confused but obeyed. "Ready to transmit, Admiral." Yamamoto began to speak, and his words went out across the fleet, across the consortium armada, across the galaxy. "This is Admiral Takeshi Yamamoto of the United Earth Defense Force. 9 minutes ago, consortium forces fired without provocation on an unarmed medical vessel. 147 people are dead. They were doctors and nurses. They were parents and children. They were guilty of nothing except trying to help people in need." Yamamoto pulled up images of the crew members who had died. Their faces appeared on every screen, human and alien alike. He spoke each name slowly and clearly, giving each person their moment to be remembered. When he finished, he continued, "The hierarchs are testing us. They want to see if we will break, if we will abandon the Valdrani and run home to safety. I want them to know something. I want every species in the consortium to know something. We will not abandon the innocent. We will not let might make right. We will not accept that murder is justice simply because those doing the murdering are powerful." He paused, letting his words sink in. Around the consortium blockade on bridges of alien ships, commanders and crew members listened in silence. "If you want to reach the Valdrani," Yamamoto said, his voice like iron, "if you want to continue this genocide, you will have to go through every last one of us. We will not fire first. We will not start this war, but we will not move. We will stand here until we run out of air to breathe, because some things are worth dying for, and stopping evil is one of them." The transmission ended. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then something extraordinary occurred. On 3 of the consortium ships, the Kelthari vessels, crew members began refusing orders. They told their commanders that they would not fire on the humans, that they would not be part of murder. The standoff continued, but now something had changed. The consortium forces were no longer unified. Doubt had taken root. Back on Earth, billions of people watched the confrontation unfold. The government had broadcast Admiral Yamamoto's speech across every channel. People gathered in streets and homes, watching the sky as if they could see the distant stars where their ships were making their stand. Many were afraid. 3 weeks passed, and the siege around Sanctuary turned into a waiting game that tested everyone's patience. The consortium blockade remained in place, a wall of 500 ships that refused to let the situation end peacefully. Human vessels continued their defensive positions, now numbering over 200 with all the civilian ships that had volunteered to join the stand. And on the surface of Sanctuary, the Valdrani watched and waited, caught between hope and terror. But the siege was having effects that the hierarchs had not anticipated. Back on Earth and the human colonies, the economy was suffering. The consortium had cut off all trade with humanity. Resources that Earth had relied on were no longer available. Technologies that humans had been learning from alien species were now forbidden. The economic sanctions hurt, and they hurt badly. Yet when Earth's government held another vote on whether to continue supporting the Valdrani, the result was even stronger than before. 79% voted to maintain the blockade. The message was clear: humanity was willing to pay the price. But the real changes were happening far from the Kepler expanse, on worlds throughout the consortium. What had started as quiet doubts was becoming open rebellion. The Kelthari were the first to make it official. Their High Consul addressed the Galactic Council in a speech that was broadcast across the galaxy. For 800 years, the Kelthari have been loyal members of this consortium, the Consul said, their feathers displaying colors of sorrow and determination. We have trusted the hierarchs to lead us wisely. We have believed that the laws we followed served justice, but we can no longer ignore what we see happening in the Kepler expanse. The humans are not criminals. They are heroes. They are doing what all of us should have done 300 years ago. They are standing up for the innocent. The Consul paused, letting their words echo through the chamber. Therefore, effective immediately, the Kelthari withdraw from the consortium blockade. We will not fire on the humans. We will not be accomplices to genocide, and we call upon all other species to examine their consciences and ask themselves, is this who we want to be? 3 Kelthari vessels left the blockade that same day, breaking formation and moving to neutral positions. The hierarchs raged, threatening the Kelthari with the same fate as the Valdrani. But the elegant bird-like beings did not back down. They had made their choice. Then something even more shocking happened. The Morthrin, who had been part of the consortium for 600 years, sent a battle group to join the human fleet. The Morthrin were warriors, tall and powerful beings covered in natural armor. They had served as the consortium's enforcers for centuries. Their betrayal was unthinkable. The Morthrin commander, General Kralthax, sent a message to Admiral Yamamoto. Human Admiral, the Morthrin have spent 6 centuries bending our knee to the hierarchs. We told ourselves it was wisdom, that we were part of something greater. But you have shown us the truth. We have been cowards. We have hidden our honor behind excuses. No more. The Morthrin stand with humanity. If the hierarchs want to reach the Valdrani, they will have to go through us as well. 20 Morthrin warships took up positions alongside the human fleet. Each ship was massive and heavily armed, worth 3 or 4 consortium vessels in combat. The balance of power was shifting, and the hierarchs knew it. In desperation, they made a decision that would prove to be their greatest mistake. They deployed a planet-killer weapon, a device so terrible that it had not been used in 500 years. The weapon was brought into position on a hierarch super dreadnought, its purpose clear to everyone watching. They were going to destroy Sanctuary entirely. The announcement came from the hierarchs themselves, broadcast across all frequencies. The human defiance has gone too far. The Valdrani situation will be resolved permanently. You have 24 hours to withdraw all ships from the Sanctuary system. After that time, the planet will be destroyed. This is not negotiable. This is not a threat. This is reality. The consortium has spoken. On the defiant, Admiral Yamamoto stood on his bridge and watched the countdown begin. 24 hours. That was all the time they had. His tactical officer spoke quietly. Admiral, we can't stop that weapon. If they fire it, Sanctuary is gone. Everything we've done will be for nothing. Yamamoto was quiet for a long time. Then he opened a channel to all human ships. This is Admiral Yamamoto. You've all heard the hierarch's ultimatum. They're going to destroy Sanctuary. They're going to kill 1 million innocent people just to prove they can. I won't order anyone to stay. If you want to leave, no one will blame you. You've already done more than anyone could ask. He paused, expecting at least some ships to break formation. Not a single vessel moved. Right, Yamamoto said, and there was pride in his voice. Then here's what we're going to do. We're going to evacuate as many Valdrani as we can. Every ship with cargo space, start landing shuttles. We have 24 hours to save 2 million people. Let's not waste a second. It was an impossible task, but humanity tried anyway. Human ships began landing all over Sanctuary. Cargo vessels, passenger ships, even military craft with any available space. The Valdrani came by the thousands, families carrying whatever they could hold, saying goodbye to a world they had called home for 3 centuries. Keeper Tessara watched the evacuation from the capital city. Around her, the ancient buildings that had stood for millennia were being abandoned. Valdrani rushed past carrying children, carrying data crystals that held their history, carrying seeds from the gardens their ancestors had planted. It was organized chaos, desperate and rushed. A human shuttle pilot approached Tessara. The young woman looked exhausted, covered in sweat from making multiple trips up to orbit. "Keeper Tessara, we have room for you and your staff. We need to go now." Tessara shook her head. "Take the children first. Take the young ones who can rebuild our species elsewhere. I am old. I have lived my life. Let me see my world one last time before it ends." The pilot grabbed Tessara's arm. "Ma'am, with respect, your people need you. If the Valdrani are going to survive, they need their leader. Please, come with us." Tessara looked at the pilot's face, at the determination and compassion there, and finally nodded. "Very well. But we take everyone we can. No one gets left behind if there's room." For 20 hours, the evacuation continued. Human ships filled beyond their designed capacity, packing in Valdrani refugees until there was barely room to move. The Morthran vessels helped too, their massive cargo holds taking in thousands. Even some Kilthari ships joined the evacuation, unable to stand by and watch. But there were too many Valdrani and not enough time. As the deadline approached, nearly 500,000 were still on the surface. Captain Maria Chen, who had brought her ship the Endeavor to help with the evacuation, did the math and felt sick. They were going to leave 500,000 people to die. Then, with 4 hours left on the countdown, something miraculous happened. Ships began appearing at the edge of the system. Not human ships, not Morthran or Kilthari. These were vessels from dozens of other consortium species. Small species that had always been too afraid to speak up. Mid-level members who had watched everything unfold and finally made their choice. They came from the Dreth, an amphibian species known for their merchant fleets. From the Zilith, crystal-based beings who rarely left their homeworld. From the Talaran, small mammals who had always been afraid of the Hierarch's power. Ship after ship arrived, each one broadcasting the same message. "We are here to help evacuate. We will not let these people die." The Hierarchs watched in shock as their authority crumbled. Species after species was openly defying them, choosing to help the humans rather than obey orders. The 1,000-year-old consortium was falling apart. With an hour left on the countdown, the last Valdrani was loaded onto a ship. Sanctuary's surface was empty now, its beautiful cities abandoned. Admiral Yamamoto opened a channel to the Hierarch super dreadnought. "This is Admiral Yamamoto. The Valdrani have been evacuated. Your genocide has failed. If you fire that weapon now, you'll be destroying an empty world just to prove a point. Is that really what you want your legacy to be?" There was no response. The countdown continued. 30 minutes, 20, 10, and then with 5 minutes remaining, 37 consortium species simultaneously made an announcement that shook the galaxy to its core. Their representatives appeared together on a broadcast, standing united. The speech was given by the Kilthari consul, speaking for all of them. "Today we withdraw from the Galactic Consortium. We can no longer be part of an organization that would destroy a world to maintain power. We can no longer follow leaders who see murder as an acceptable solution to defiance. Instead, we are forming a new alliance, built on the principles the humans have shown us. Principles of justice, compassion, and the belief that might does not make right. We invite all species who believe in these values to join us, and we stand with humanity and the Valdrani, regardless of what comes next." The message was signed by 37 species, representing nearly a third of the consortium's total membership. Their combined fleets moved into position around the human vessels, forming a protective wall. The Hierarchs now faced an armada that outnumbered their remaining loyal forces. 6 months had passed since the standoff at Sanctuary, and the galaxy looked completely different. The old Galactic Consortium had collapsed like a building with its foundation removed. Species after species had withdrawn, until only the Hierarchs and a handful of their most loyal followers remained. The insectoid beings had retreated to their core worlds, bitter and isolated, their 1,000-year rule ended by a species that had barely learned to travel between stars. Captain Maria Chen stood on the observation deck of a space station orbiting a world called New Sanctuary. The name was appropriate because that's exactly what it was, a new home for the Valdrani people. The planet below was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents, similar enough to their lost world to feel like home, but new enough to be full of possibility. All around the planet, ships from dozens of species were working together. Human engineers installed power generators. Morthran construction crews built the framework for new cities. Kelthari architects designed buildings that honored Valdrani culture while incorporating modern technology. It was the largest cooperative effort in galactic history, and it was all focused on giving the Valdrani a second chance. "It's amazing, isn't it?" a voice said beside Maria. She turned to see Admiral Yamamoto standing next to her, also watching the construction below. The Admiral looked older now, his hair more gray than silver. The stress of the past months had aged everyone who had been part of the standoff. "It is," Maria agreed. 6 months ago I thought we might all die in that system. I thought the hierarchs would destroy us rather than admit they were wrong. I never imagined it would end like this. Yamamoto smiled. "That's because you were thinking like a military strategist. You were calculating odds and firepower. But this was never really about weapons. It was about something much more powerful." "What's that?" "The idea that things can be different." That's what scared the hierarchs so much. For 1,000 years they had convinced everyone that their way was the only way. That might made right, and questioning authority was dangerous. Then humanity came along and said no, and that one word, that simple refusal to accept injustice, broke their entire system. Below them, a Valdrani child laughed as they ran through the streets of a newly built city. The sound carried over the communication channels, pure and joyful. It was a sound that hadn't been heard on Sanctuary in 300 years, the sound of a future being born. The space station where Maria and Yamamoto stood was called Unity, and it served as the temporary headquarters for the Free Assembly. In just 6 months, the new galactic government had grown to include 89 species. Some were members of the old consortium who had defected. Others were independent civilizations who had never joined the consortium because they didn't trust the hierarchs. And a few were newly discovered species who were lucky enough to join a galaxy that had learned from its mistakes. The founding ceremony for the Free Assembly was scheduled for today, and representatives from every member species were gathering in Unity's main chamber. Unlike the old Consortium Council, which had been designed to intimidate, this chamber was built to encourage cooperation. It was circular, with no elevated platforms or positions of dominance. Every species sat at the same level, equal participants in the discussion. Maria and Admiral Yamamoto made their way to the chamber, joining the rest of Earth's delegation. Director Okafor was there, looking proud and tired. Sarah Kim, the ambassador who had worried about the consequences of defying the hierarchs, was smiling more than Maria had ever seen. The entire human delegation wore simple uniforms with no special decorations. They had agreed that today was not about celebrating their role in events. It was about looking forward. The ceremony began with a moment of silence for all those who had died. The 17 Valdrani worlds destroyed 3 centuries ago. The 147 humans killed when the hierarchs fired on the medical transport. And the countless others who had suffered under the old system. The silence was heavy with memory and purpose. Then Keeper Tessara stood to speak. The elderly Valdrani moved slowly, their crystalline skin catching the light and throwing small rainbows across the chamber. But their voice was strong and clear, carrying the weight of 300 years of sorrow and hope. Honored representatives, friends, and allies, I stand before you as the keeper of a people who were forgotten. 300 years ago, the Valdrani made a choice to stand for our principles rather than surrender our freedom. That choice cost us everything. We lost our worlds. We lost billions of our people. We waited for 3 centuries in isolation, watching our civilization die slowly, wondering if anyone in the galaxy would ever care. Tessara paused, looking around the chamber at the faces of dozens of species. Then came the humans, a young species barely established in galactic society with no power and no influence. They found us by accident, learned our story, and made a choice that should have been impossible. They chose to stand for us even though it meant risking everything they had. They chose justice over safety. They chose compassion over convenience. The Keeper's voice grew stronger, but the humans did something even more important than saving us. They reminded all of you of something you had forgotten. They showed you that tyranny is not inevitable, That following orders is not the same as doing right. That one person, one species standing up and saying no can change everything. Tassara turned to face the human delegation directly. Captain Chen, Admiral Yamamoto, Director Okafor, and all the brave humans who stood between us and annihilation. The Valdrani owe you a debt we can never repay. You gave us back our future. You gave us back hope. But more than that, you showed the galaxy what it means to be truly civilized. Not advanced weapons or faster ships or greater knowledge. True civilization is the courage to do what's right even when it's hard. Even when it's dangerous. Even when you have everything to lose. The chamber erupted in applause. Species who had never met humans before stood and honored them. The Morthran warriors beat their chests in respect. The Kelthari's feathers displayed colors of deep admiration. Even species that had initially been skeptical of humanity's actions were now standing to acknowledge what they had done. When the applause finally died down, it was time for the formal founding of the Free Assembly. Representative after representative stood and pledged their species to the new alliance. Each pledge was the same: to cooperate freely to protect the weak, to resolve disputes through discussion rather than force, and to never again allow might to make right. When it came time for humanity to make their pledge, Director Okafor stood. He was the oldest person in the human delegation, a man who had seen Earth's first contact with alien species and had guided humanity through the difficult early years of galactic politics. His voice carried the wisdom of experience. On behalf of humanity, I pledge Earth and all our colonies to this free assembly. We join not as junior members looking for protection, and not as powerful allies seeking advantage. We join as equals committed to building something better than what came before. We have learned that the universe is full of wonders and dangers, but the greatest danger is not from weapons or conflicts. The greatest danger is losing sight of what makes us worth saving: our compassion, our principles, and our willingness to stand for each other. The pledges continued until all 89 species had spoken. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The Free Assembly Charter was presented, a document that had been written collaboratively by representatives from every member species. It laid out the principles of the new alliance: voluntary membership, equal representation, peaceful conflict resolution, and a commitment to protecting those who could not protect themselves. Unlike the old consortium, the Free Assembly had no supreme leaders. Instead, decisions would be made by majority vote, with disputes settled by arbitration panels chosen randomly from member species. It was messy and complicated, but it was fair. And fairness, everyone had learned, was worth the complications. As the ceremony concluded, Maria found herself standing next to Keeper Tassara. The Valdrani elder looked at her with those deep purple eyes and spoke softly. "Captain Chen, I wonder if you know what you've really done." "We saved your people," Maria said. "That was always the goal." "No," Tassara said gently. "You did much more than that. 300 years ago, when the hierarchs destroyed our worlds, they taught the galaxy a lesson. Do not resist or you will be crushed. Every species learned that lesson. They learned to be afraid, to stay silent, to look away when injustice happened. For 1,000 years, that fear kept the consortium in power." Tessera's skin brightened slightly, the Valdrani equivalent of a smile. "But then humanity taught the galaxy a different lesson. You taught them that courage is contagious, that standing up to evil is possible, that one person saying no can inspire thousands to do the same. You broke the cycle of fear, Captain. You showed everyone that things can change. That is a gift beyond measure." Maria felt tears forming in her eyes. "We just did what felt right." "Yes," Tassara agreed. "And that is why it mattered so much. You did not act from calculation or strategy. You acted from conscience. And conscience, it turns out, is the most powerful force in the universe.